Ready to binge your next crime thriller? Sean Bean stars in This City Is Ours on AMC+. When a drug kingpin steps down from the throne, loyalty turns lethal. Dubbed the Scouse Sopranos. See one family's fight for power over the gritty streets of Liverpool. Rolling Stone UK calls it a firecracker of a series. You don't want to miss This City Is Ours. Now streaming on AMC+. Learn more at amcplus.com.
Ugh, you said you were over him, but his hoodie is still in your rotation. It's time. Grab your phone, snap a few pics, and sell it on Depop. Listed in minutes, with no selling fees. And just like that, a guy 500 miles away just paid full price for your closure. And right on cue.
Hey, still got my hoodie?
Nope, but I've got tonight's dinner paid for. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste. List now with no selling fees. Payment processing fees and boosting fees still apply. See website for details.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. From roof repair to emergency plumbing and more, when you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find a pro for your project at Angie.com.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, when identical twins are implicated in a murder, the wrong one is arrested. Why would one brother let the other take the fall for a crime he didn't commit? We'll talk about the podcast Blood Will Tell from Wondery and Campside Media. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us, private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, it's Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, all the way from Valencia, Spain, author of the City Trilogy, host of Rip Current, More Like Ancient Aliens, and the podcast, soon to be a major motion picture, Strange Arrivals. It's Toby Ball. Que pasa, Toby?
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin?
Yes.
What is coming up on the podcast next week?
So on Monday, we're going to talk about the podcast Foundling.
All right.
Foundling. And then a week from today, we'll be discussing the 3-part documentary series on Hulu, Friends Like These.
All right. I'm looking forward to doing that. Laura, are you being currently contacted to try and use your pet detective skills? What was happening over there?
Yeah, so I was getting calls and texts on my phone as we are going to this taping. There is a dog in my neighborhood that is escaped and in hiding. And they were like, can you come help us look for this dog? And I said, I am taping a podcast. Don't chase that dog. If you see it, don't chase it. Just report it.
So, how are you supposed to get it if you don't chase it?
Well, they're so skittish. Dogs and cats behave very differently when they escape. And that's the whole thing. And they take off. And now they're in that fight or flight mode. Like, they're really going to take off. Whereas cats are going to just run outside and hide under something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Did you have a plan?
You know how you catch a dog on the loose? If you see it, open your car door or the tailgate of your car, and they will 100% come. Every time our dogs have run off, and they don't go far, they always go to top of the hill. We just drive up there, open the trunk, and they just jump right in.
No, I got this message. Hi, Laura. I'm calling on behalf of Heidi's dog. It ran off in the neighborhood, and I was calling to see if you could call me back. I'm in Newburyport, but I need some help to find the dog. Call me back. I'm like, okay.
My goodness.
All right.
There's these dog emergencies.
A pet detective
Certified
emergency.
pet detective, so that's good.
Yep.
You're going to need to get one of those big butterfly nets that you could
like
capture
the dog catcher in Lady and the Tramp.
Exactly. All right, Kevin.
Yeah.
Should we discuss the podcast we're supposed to be discussing on this show?
Let's do that.
All right. Leading off.
An usually has no problem jumping into a fight, and he's had plenty of liquid courage.
I grabbed a knife from his pocket.
Trung slips An's knife into his own pocket. He doesn't want his brother to do something stupid and dangerous.
When his 18-year-old brother An gets into a drunken fight at a party, Trung stabs his attacker. San Jose police place both identical twins in a lineup, and witnesses mistakenly say An was the one who delivered the fatal blow, a mistake neither brother cares to correct.
Raising my voice, like, dude, get me out of this fucking place. And I just hung up on him,
anything to wake Trung up.
Just make him feel guilty that he's out there and I'm in here, you know?
Their silence was born from their intense fraternal bond, as well as being Vietnamese immigrants in street gangs where snitching is a dangerous proposition. But An's resentment festers as Trung's guilt for his actions grows. Will one of them spit out the truth, or will they both swallow a lie?
Brothers who were best friends, who trusted each other completely, who would have followed each other anywhere, even if it meant losing absolutely everything.
In the podcast Blood Will Tell from Wondery and Campside Media, host Jen Miller frames Trung and An's story in Shakespearean terms, a tragedy about how far someone will go to protect a loved one. As the brothers recount their life stories and explain their actions, Miller eventually gets the two to address the consequences of their decisions on their brotherly bond. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Blood Will Tell. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Laura, as I said in the introduction, we do have a Shakespearean framing for this story, in large part because later in the story, we learn that Trung has gotten into a program in prison that he participated in where they performed Shakespeare. So I guess somebody thought, I have an idea.
Right.
Let's use that as a framing device. Do you think that works?
No. I think if they had done a podcast just focused on the stories of people in the Shakespeare program, and they kind of profiled some of the people in this, and they kind of talked about that program, kind of like one of those restorative justice things. The way that it was used in this, I felt like it was trying too hard to be cute and clever, right down to the names of the episodes that were all like Shakespearean names. And I'm like, this is too much. I think if this was an academic setting and somebody's like, I'm going to write my thesis on this and I'm going to tie it to Shakespeare, like, great. Here, it felt like overkill, and I felt like it was a stretch. Like, okay, he was in this program. Okay, sure, we can find these connections, but it wasn't that interesting to me. And I feel like it felt like they were trying to orchestrate something to make it seem very clever that this was how we were segueing into this. When in the end of the day, I was just like, yeah, okay, that didn't work in this setting.
What do you think, Kevin?
I didn't mind the framing device. I mean, I think overall this is interesting and, okay, it makes sense because this is where Jen Miller, the reporter, meets Trung. And the tale does have, many Shakespearean elements too, but many stories do. So I don't know if it quite lives up to a Shakespearean level tragedy, but I didn't mind the framing device. I've used things like that in my writing, not my best writing, but I have used that.
Something wicked this way comes. I believe that was something you used in one of your books, right? As a chapter title or something?
Yeah. Serpent's Tooth, all those ones.
So, Toby, let's talk about what the meeting must have been like around this story, right? We have twins, identical twins, and no one can tell which one committed the murder, including the person who tries to pick one of them out in a lineup, and the wrong one ends up going to jail. That's a solid setup, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pitch, like going in and being like, okay, well, there's a fight and one of the brothers is getting beat up by this other guy. So the second brother like goes and stabs the guy to get him off, but the guy ends up dying. But it was actually the brother who's getting beat up is the one who gets convicted and sent to jail. But the guy who stabbed him and actually did the killing doesn't say anything for 2 years. I mean, it's like when you put out the story like that, it's like, oh man, that's fucked up. And I mean, to me, it'd be like, oh, that's super interesting that was what happened and who's to blame and why did this guy let his brother like rot in jail for 2 years for a crime he definitely did not do. But the problem is that part of the story can really maybe be stretched over an episode or two. And then the rest of it needs to get padded out with like sort of their bios, like before and after and all this stuff. There's a little bit like that one that we did about the Texas Ranger and his brother who's a criminal or something. Like these guys at least like are doing stuff together and are, it's not just like two completely separate people. But at the same time, it's like the actual interesting part of it is a pretty relatively small percentage of what the actual content of the podcast is.
Right.
And their life stories are like kind of interesting, but they're not so interesting that you want to listen to 6 episodes about it. Again, it feels more like a segment or an episode or two.
Right.
Toby, I think you're right. Like, if you were going to write the fictionalized version, well, if you're going to write a screenplay, and the instructions are, okay, well, we need to include twins, because, the actor wants to do the...
Like Dead Ringers?
Yeah, he wants to do split screen, like James Franco and The Deuce or whatever. Then this is probably the plot you'd come up with, right? One twin commits the murder, and the other goes to jail for it, and... then it plays off of those themes. And so that's what you get here, right? And whereas the brothers Ortiz, there's an implied plot based on the setup. And so with the brothers Ortiz, one's a cop, one's a criminal, we assume that it's somewhere along the way, like those two worlds are going to collide. And they don't really. And that's not really anyone's fault, because in real life, it didn't really do that. So you can't make it up just to be a stronger true crime story. But that podcast kind of suffered because it didn't fulfill an implied promise based on the premise.
Yeah.
But here, to that extent, yeah, you've got twin brothers, and they put them both in a fucking lineup. We got to talk about that.
Yeah, it's wild. Twins, anything with twins is interesting inherently. The whole time I was listening to this, I kept saying to myself, this is great IP for a scripted series. Mm-hmm. It would be a great, one season thing along the lines of, DTF St. Louis that we just reviewed or whatever, where you have this thing that happens, because then you could really flesh out stuff that visually I think would be more interesting than listening to it. Because when you hear about twins, it's not nearly as interesting as when you're looking at twins. Let's be real, right? But the other thing that kind of bothered me about this podcast, Laura, is that somebody died, right? Somebody was stabbed and died. And all the guilt and torment in the podcast is framed around what Trung did to his brother, not the fact that he actually killed a person. And I understand they had an access issue with that. The family didn't want to be involved, which is fine. But I kind of feel like, and I don't love the whole, let's make a whole episode about victim-centric. I think that that's really overdone and overplayed. But the murder was really weighing on me a lot when I was listening to this podcast. What about you?
It was like a whole. I'm like, okay, so we hear about the stabbing, and then, like you said, it's focused on the back and forth with the brothers. And I get it. The victim's family doesn't want to participate. However, their name is out there. I'm sure there's an obituary. I'm sure there's some other information we could tell about the crime from the court documents. I think for me, without the context of more about the murder and who was killed and what their relationship was in this community. Did they know them? Did they not know them? Who are the other people? It felt like I had less to hold on to in terms of what I was invested in with this podcast, because it was like a complete absence from the storytelling. And you didn't necessarily need to have a whole episode devoted, but some information. The whole story is about somebody dying. But we really know nothing about this person who died. And they're like, well, the people spoke out at the sentencing. And I'm like, they had some things to say, but that's about the extent of it. And I feel like that to me was just such a glaring omission. There were ways to do it that would have been tasteful, that would have been not doing something that felt like you're really pushing the boundaries in terms of including it, that would have given the story more context, more three-dimensional, as opposed to just this, is this brother going to fess up? Is that brother what's going to happen? This wasn't, I'm like, okay, so what about the crime here?
Yeah. So Toby, do you think that we get enough sense of the differences between these two brothers? I mean, we're told that they're very different. I'm not 100% certain that they are as different as we are told that they are. But what do you think? Was that communicated effectively for you?
I agree with what you just said. I mean, it just felt a little bit too pat to describe real people, where it's, Anh is like the daredevil and he's kind of mercurial. And when they're kids, the dad likes him because he's kind of a go-getter and has a lot of sort of courage.
Although he's only a little kid, it's clear that Anh is a risk taker. Trung watches as his brother reaches the branch and pulls himself up into the tree, no problem.
Climbing across the tree, just super fast.
And now Trung wants to try.
And Trung is sort of dependable, but kind of timid, isn't willing to take the chances and stuff. And then as they get older, An's, what seemed good when he was younger sort of becomes a liability, and Trung's sort of more measured approach becomes more appropriate. I just kind of feel like I don't run into siblings who fall so neatly into those categories very often. Like it kind of feels like a shorthand for something that's probably more complicated. So I don't know. For something that's really just about these two people, like I guess I would have assumed that I would have like had a little more nuanced sense of who they were. I mean, it's really just about the two of them, but you're sort of left with these two kind of archetypes and they kind of go through the whole thing like that.
Well, I think it's interesting because in real life as twins, the world struggles to distinguish between them, right? As they've always grown up, and that's sort of because they look like hard to tell apart. They kind of blend into the same person. And so there needed to be some way to distinguish between these two men as characters. And I get how Jen positioned them like that with, Anna's the protector and Trung, like, who looks up for him. And then that sets up the idea here. It informs like why one would keep his mouth shut when he's in jail for doing the crime that the other one did, because one is the protector. It has always been the protector. I don't know if it's such a bright line between them and if it creates enough space where two different characters can flourish in any kind of Shakespearean way or not. But I understand the logic of writing it that way. I think it just really helps provide some context, like the context we provide with all of our exclusive content at patreon.com.
Business section.
Patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media is where you will get exclusive content from us here at Crime Writers On. It includes the Crime Writers On After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our advice show Married with Podcast, Rebecca's True Crime show with Mel Barrett called Something's Off, and you also can get Leave It to Bricker, in which Laura Bricker solves mysteries, or at least mysteries to her, in her quaint AF town of Exeter, New Hampshire. You get that only if you're a Bricker scaler. And if you come in at the Let's Do What We Do level, you'll get episodes of Crime Writers On early and ad-free. You'd already know if we are thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways on this podcast.
I think you can probably guess, though.
Well, I don't know. I can't guess.
All
You
right.
don't know what I'm thinking.
I don't know what you're thinking.
You don't know what I'm thinking. You're not my twin brother, sister.
I'm thinking Toby's cat is cleaning itself.
Yeah.
So, okay. Like I said, exclusive bonus content, including Toby's cat licking itself.
Yeah.
And if you want even more Toby Ball, become a deep diver. You'll get all of that content, and you get to be an official sponsor of Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast.
Lucky you.
Currently, the episode is discussing the book This House of Grief. And you want to go to the library or purchase a copy of Chaos, because that's the next book they are talking about. And you can get that book at a little website called Amazon.
Oh.
They started off, they're a book selling site. They also have other things that you can buy there in addition to books. If you go to our Amazon storefront, you can also see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, can you tell us what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Well, Kevin, we just took the dogs to the groomer, and we wanted their hair to stay fluffy, like we did it last time. And one of them, they were able to do that because I've been brushing them this whole time. And the other one, they had to shave completely bald because I was brushing him with the wrong kind of brush for his coat. So I procured a self-cleaning slicker brush from Amazon so that I could properly keep Briscoe's coat untangled.
All right. Not Tyra Banks level fashion, but
No.
that will do. I'm wondering what our listeners have been purchasing, and that's where Toby Ball gets his listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations. Toby, what are this week's deep cut recommendations?
Earlier in the podcast, I was talking about what I thought the pitch meeting might have been for that podcast. I'm interested in what the pitch meeting was for this product. It is the Honey Nut Cheerios cereal limited edition heart shapes affirmations box.
Ooh.
Heart healthy, gluten-free, large size, 15.4 ounces. Get some affirmations with your cereal.
You're loved. You're loved. You're wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like the podcast that Linda Cardellini listened to in the last thing we reviewed.
That's right.
It's like, you don't need to add sugar. You're sweet enough.
Can you speak up? I
Okay.
can't hear you over the sound of my crunching.
All right. What else you got?
Well, somebody's having a good time. 100 pieces Mardi Gras cocktail picks, 4.7-inch long fancy toothpicks for appetizers, wooden fruit skewers, garnished bamboo food sticks for drinks, party, supple.
Supple.
Might have been supplies, not sure. Cut off.
Oh, okay.
Those supple toothpicks. I love it. Those are great. You can find all of those things when you shop us first. When you go to Amazon, your first stop should be amazon.com/shop/CrimeWritersOn. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
Kevin, before we wrap up this business section, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Brianne Wells and Katie Fernal. Bless you.
Brianne and Katie, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. I can't tell you what it means to us.
They have been with us forever on Patreon.
Wow.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. We can't make the show without our Patreon supporters, and so you are some of the heroes that help us get it done. Kevin, does that end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now.
I'm Livy Dunn, All-American gymnast and Viore athlete. When you travel and train as much as I do, you find happiness where you are. On the mat or on the sand, movement and comfort are essential. That's why I live in Performance Joggers by Viore. Made from DreamKnit fabric that's made of 89% recycled materials, effortlessly soft and made to move as much as I do. My happiness starts here, in the softest joggers on the planet. Get 20% off your first purchase at Viore.com/Livy. That's VUORI.com/LIVVY. Exclusions apply. Not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but enjoy free shipping on U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. Go to Viore.com/Livy and discover the full versatility of Viore clothing. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? I was so amazed at how he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube.
I think we should call her Doctor.
Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
This is a Monday.com ad. The same Monday.com helping people worldwide getting work done faster and better. The same Monday.com designed for every team and every industry. The same Monday.com with built-in AI, scaling your work from day one. The same Monday.com that your team will actually love using. The same Monday.com with an easy and intuitive setup. Go to Monday.com and try it for free. Yes, the same Monday.com.
So, Laura, do you think that a multi-episode podcast series is appropriate for this story? I'll just tell you, my opinion is that the story is much thinner than the promise of the podcast.
Right.
Like, for instance, I feel like our host, who seems like a good reporter, is really trying to almost instigate tension between the brothers so that she can resolve the tension between the brothers. I really, like, they lived together. I wasn't feeling that there was that much tension between them when Trung got out of jail, but she's like, yet still, they've never talked about it. I'm like, maybe they don't want to. I don't know.
Like, I don't want it to be perceived in that way. It's like, choose my brother or choose my wife. Like, that's not fair for her.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes I do come off in that way, like a know-it-all, I guess.
I think I was saving that word, like a smart ass.
What do you think? Was this the right format for this story?
No, like, I liked your idea, Rebecca, about having like a scripted series, but I was saying, like, I could see this as like a 90-minute documentary where we kind of recap this because it's kind of interesting. I don't think there was enough to draw it out over the episodes of this podcast where they were trying to add the relationship and the background and the immigrant brother story and how they acclimated to life and how one joins a gang and the other is a Eagle Scout. And I think that felt more like filler to me. And I feel like there was probably a more interesting part to this story if it had been told in a more concise way. And you know, I think a 90-minute documentary or like one episode of a special podcast. I think it was drawn out to fill all the episodes. And I think for me, that's where it lost like any sort of dramatic tension or compelling me to continue to listen. I started to kind of zone out at times because it felt like there was a lot that was like the relationship part of this, but narratively and like from the storytelling point of view, I just felt like that wasn't enough to carry this in a way that made you keep wanting to listen to the next episode. Whereas I think the story is interesting. I think the lineup was wild. I think there's some legal issues here. And I think the lawyer they had in there at one point, I was like, I would follow that guy around, that like old school public defender. But I think just a documentary, again, where you could see the twins maybe would have been a better vehicle to tell this story.
Yeah. Another thing that I am not sure we got enough of, Toby, is we obviously know that one brother went to jail for a crime the other brother committed. Although there is some, like, I think, gray area here because the other brother only committed the crime because the first brother had the knife, right? So there's like a little bit of, I think, moral gray area about, whether or not An would have committed a crime if he'd actually had his knife on him when he got jumped. Like, we don't know, right? But one of the things that happens with An is that he's in jail and he describes being in jail and it goes by like kind of fast. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't assume being in jail is bad, but for the amount of time he spent there and for the amount of resentment that we're told he built up, that's the heart of the story, right? And it just sort of like breezes by.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really set up based on the premise of the show. Like, that should be the focus, should be the crime, on being in jail, whatever kind of moral qualms Trung is having for letting An stay in jail, the eventual switch, and then maybe the immediate aftermath. But instead, it's kind of just like another thing that happens in their lives. It doesn't get a whole lot more time than when somebody opens a club where some guy from a different gang shows up and they have this not really showdown and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like they needed to rearrange things or reprioritize things so that what was interesting about their story was put front and center rather than just another in a string of things that happen. They wake up the next morning and they find out that this guy they got into a fight with is now dead. And It's like one of those, like, there's no turning back moments and they have to kind of figure out what to do. And they talk a little bit like, oh, we could have gone to Vietnam, but we decided it wouldn't be fair to my parent, all this stuff. That to me could have been played up for a lot more of you're 18 years old or whatever they were. And you're seeing, like, literally, this is an inflection point in your life. You're trying to figure out at that age, like, do you go back to the country of your parents or do you stay and try and deal with it here and all this stuff? And it just kind of goes by and you kind of hear a little bit about their thought process, but there's not a real, that sort of pit of the stomach feeling of like, oh man, like these guys were forced under considerable stress to make a decision that was going to affect the rest of their lives. And they had to do it like right away at age 18. And that, again, it's just sort of like another thing that sort of happens.
Right. Yeah. One of the things when I talked earlier about the murder sort of weighing on me the whole time, I think what I mean is that, like, there's definitely consciousness of guilt, right? Because as soon as they find out that the guy died, they clean up the car, they burn their clothes, like they do everything that a person who doesn't want to get caught does. And as far as I understand, they both participated in that. And so there's just stuff here that kind of was described in a very matter-of-fact way that was not, to me, particularly matter-of-fact in terms of choices that these kids made. But Kevin, one of the interesting aspects of the criminal case, which you mentioned, is the fact that the police put both of these brothers in the same lineup. Thoughts?
What the actual fuck?
Wow, that's funny. I picked the wrong one. He picked the wrong one? How do I even talk about the insanity of this moment? Or really, of this whole situation? To put two identical twins in a lineup? Really?
I mean, like, it's already hard enough, to like pick up, they put in like another guy with a blue jacket and you're like, oh, I don't know. But you put the twin brother in, it's almost comical how that happened. I mean, I don't know like what they're trying to...
Right. Because isn't it a sign that either one of them could be guilty if someone picks one of them?
Yeah, but then I started thinking about, but even if you just put one of them in, right? If you're the officer and you don't know who wielded the knife and you put Trung in the lineup, everybody's going to pick him, right? Because It's like he looked like the guy that did it, right? And so, I mean, he looks exactly like the guy did or on or whatever. So it's kind of a weird way of handling it, you know? I mean, it's not like Mexican telenovela where you have the evil brother comes in and apparently, was it Trung had like a little bit of a mustache, but like in a Mexican telenovela, it would have like this big bushy mustache. So you could tell.
Little curls on the end.
Yes, the curls on the end, so you could tell who the bad one is.
The one who's always stroking his mustache.
Yeah. Again, the more I think about it, I don't know what the right way is to handle twins in a lineup. Yeah. I think they were bringing them in one at a time, right? And that's what it was. So they could have brought like the same guy back, put a fake mustache on everybody else too, and just run them through a second time. That was really weird. That was really weird. Yeah.
If this were a Law and Order episode or a scripted series, and I understand that he got somewhat of a shortened sentence as a result of this crappy lineup, but if this were a scripted show, there would have been something where like not knowing which twin was actually in jail. And so there's just no way to prove it. And so they'd end up getting away with it. Like this happened on Law and Order a couple of times. With like
a lot of things.
Father and
the
mother.
DNA is the same.
Exactly. What did you think about the lineup, Laura? If that happened to a client that you were helping represent, what would you do?
Well, I'm not
10
a lawyer.
on the Richter scale.
I would call the lawyer and I'd be like, what the fuck? This seems like this just seems like such a horrible idea because there's so many issues with lineups and how they're done and how people are influenced and the suggestibility and memory and everything. So to have two identical twins, both, and they're like, oh no, it's that one. And I'm like, how the fuck? Oh, because of the mole? Like, seriously? Like in the middle of something like that, you had the wherewithal to look at the freaking mole? Really? No.
In the dark, in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, the whole thing was nuts.
What do you think of the fact that An was in jail, Toby? And, we hear that he still has a relationship with Trung while he's in jail. But Trung keeps saying, like, for lack of a better phrase, he's sort of like has him on the hook, but he doesn't actually like do anything about it for kind of a while. Like I said, I don't want to say the host manufactured more drama between the brothers than there was. There probably was a lot of drama. We just heard about it and didn't see it. I mean, what do you think of that? The fact that he didn't just fess up right away, I guess is what my question is.
It's a tough one. Like, I assume he was just like, I don't fucking want to go to jail. And, was wrestling with his conscience about whether he's okay with his brother being there instead of him, so he can hang out with his girlfriend and stuff. But yeah, I mean, quite honestly, credit to An for not completely losing his mind at that situation. I guess it's before they have the actual conversation, but she's kind of describing the sort of tension in the house when they're living together. And Trung's thing is like, An, if you didn't get into that fight, then I never would have had to stab that guy to death. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's really quite the gotcha that you think it is. But part of the frustrating thing, and it's not really anybody's fault, but by the time they get the two of them in a studio to talk about it, like so much time has passed, and they've lived together. I just kind of feel like it's not raw anymore. Like even if they haven't specifically talked about this, just through living their lives, they must have worked through a lot of this stuff, and maybe verbalizing it is a little bit different, but for this to really work and really be genuine and like I said, raw, like you got to get it a lot earlier. I mean, it's got to be right when they're coming out and everything is still right at the surface and they're not sure how things are going to work out with their lives and things like that. By the time they talk, there's still like lingering resentments and stuff, but that time has passed. You can kind of talk about it and like affirm each other's feelings. But I think that's why it comes off as being like so non-contentious. It says like, oh yeah, we've kind of made peace with this, even if we haven't talked about it. We've all made these mental compromises so that we can live together. And now we're just sort of verbalizing what they are.
Yeah, but I don't know. I see it the opposite. I'm going to give Jen a lot of credit for like pushing the brothers to talk because, yeah, it happened years ago, but we are doing with this today. We didn't have this podcast all those years ago when they got out, and it might have been raw, but it's still worthwhile because they haven't addressed it. I mean, if we believe what we hear in the setup, no, they've been like a lot of guys, a lot of dudes, and we're just going to shove that down in the box, and we're going to kind of ignore it. And what we hear from them is that, they really haven't talked to each other about the feelings there, right? And so what was it? Trung was mad at An because An got into the fight that, that sounds silly, but that's like real to them. And I'm glad that she jumped in that one time to kind of like get them to have sort of a deeper discussion. I think it's very typical for men to sort of be that way. And for whatever reason, they have, I don't want to say if it's a fear of one another, but they certainly feel like they don't want to. There's part of the boat rocking that you just, if your fiance hates your twin brother, like there's something happening there, and you're like, okay, that your fiance hates your brother. Like there's some kind of lingering dysfunction. And I'll just say that I'm glad that they tried to address it in the podcast, because a lot of times we have these situations where we're just like, there's a big thing that doesn't get addressed. Like whether it's confronting somebody about their lies and the evidence against them, or whatever emotional walls they've put up. You know, for me, Jen Miller gets credit for at least trying to facilitate that conversation. And they do learn some things about each other. I mean, was Trung the one who grabbed the knife and like went in the bathroom and contemplated hurting himself? And like, I never knew that. He never shared that. And so there are things that they didn't get to. And I appreciate, for the sake of the podcast and hopefully them, that they did try that.
I'm Livy Dunn, All-American gymnast and Viore athlete. When you travel and train as much as I do, you find happiness where you are. On the mat or on the sand, movement and comfort are essential. That's why I live in Performance Joggers by Viore. Made from DreamKnit fabric that's made of 89% recycled materials, effortlessly soft and made to move as much as I do. My happiness starts here, in the softest joggers on the planet. Get 20% off your first purchase at Viore.com/Libby. That's VUORI.com/LIVVY. Exclusions apply. Not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but enjoy free shipping on U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. Go to Viore.com/Libby and discover the full versatility of Viore clothing. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions.
Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids, all 8 of them, should something happen to us.
Are you my dad now?
No, sorry, I do basements. Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
And now, the next chapter of the Serta Counting Sheep.
Hey, Uncle Number One, why aren't we counting anymore?
Let me tell you a story. Long ago, Serta invented the perfect sleeper mattress.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. It says the all-new Serta Perfect Sleeper with the Q4 support system has 4-in-1 perfectly interlinked coils that help relieve aches and back pain for perfect sleep night after night.
We'll never get counted again.
Nope.
Serta, we make the world's best mattress.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes, at the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast Blood Will Tell from Wondery and Campside Media. Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for Blood Will Tell?
I hate to do this, but this is a thumbs down for me.
It's your job, Laura. It's okay.
I know it's my job.
You've done it hundreds of other times.
I have. I know all the work people put into putting podcasts together. For me, this podcast really did not work in the format that it was told. I felt like this story was an interesting story. There was maybe a different way to tell this story. I don't think telling it in the podcast, the way that it played out, was the right vehicle. There was a lot of filler for me, a lot of background that really broke up the momentum of the story in a way that gave it any sort of suspense or impulsion as it was being told. I think that the framing device of using Shakespeare to try to frame this, for me, felt forced. I think I would like to know about the Shakespeare program that was the catalyst, the jumping off point to tell this story, which is how our host learned about this. I think that sounds like a really interesting restorative justice program that I would like to learn about. I didn't like the way that it was used here. And there was a lot of misfires for me in terms of how this story was told. At the end of the day, I found myself kind of drifting as I was listening to it because in the middle of the story, there was a lot of background. And not to say that's not relevant or interesting, but I think it just broke up the story of the crime in a way that I kind of didn't pay as much attention as I would have if it had been framed a little bit differently. So, and then there's the whole issue of we didn't really learn about the victim of this crime to the degree that would have had me more invested in this story. So that is why I am a thumbs down.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Blood Will Tell?
Yeah, I guess I'm a mild thumbs down. I mean, the reality is I just don't think there's enough story here to carry the length of the podcast. I mean, the setup is almost unbelievably interesting with who's at fault and all this stuff and, you know, identical twins and things like that. But it's a fairly small percentage of the overall podcast, which just ends up being sort of biographical about these two people and stuff like that, which it's kind of interesting. But, you know, I don't know with all the stuff that's out there, like why their story beyond this one incident is that interesting? I don't know. So anyway, I found my mind kind of drifting. I mean, I think the journalism's fine. I like the host, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like a huge thumbs down, but it doesn't have a whole lot to offer. Again, if it had been like a 1 episode thing or possibly a 2 episode thing, I think it could have been really strong. I think they could have also re-envisioned how to tell the story a little bit to center the interesting pieces a little bit more than they did, rather than just sort of dropping them into a chronology. But they didn't. So I'm a mild thumbs down.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm a sideways on this. It's not bad. And right, the setup is really compelling. You have twin brothers, one's in jail for a crime the other one did. And so how did they get into this mess? How did they get out of it? I thought that the host did a decent job of telling us the background. It's interesting, you know, the life inside Vietnamese American community, a Vietnamese themed Boy Scout troop. You know, it's like, all right, and the gangs and whatnot. So all the elements were there. For some reason, it just didn't feel propulsive. Yeah, maybe it has to do with the amount of episodes. I don't know. It didn't really, for me, do anything wrong, but there wasn't anything sticky to it that kind of made it feel like it continued to move along, you know, and good attempt at the end to sort of give us an emotional close to this mystery. And that didn't quite land, but I didn't hate it. You know, it's fine to listen to. This would have been a good This American Life episode or a great long-form magazine article, but didn't quite come together as a good podcast. So I'm sideways.
Yeah, this podcast is sideways for me too. It definitely suffers from we need enough ad load disease. And I really want to encourage studios that make work that I like. And Campside is definitely one of those studios. And I'll just give away my secret. I work at NHPR. As folks know, we put out 2 podcasts in the last year. One was 3 episodes and one was 4 episodes, and they both did very well. And I think if we had tried to stretch them to 6, they would not have done very well because they would have become boring, or we would have just been making episodes to make episodes. And that's what this sounds like to me. At its heart, very interesting premise. As I said during the review, this would make a great scripted story. It would make a great 1 season, 8 episode scripted series. The premise is super interesting. But where it starts, where it ends, isn't what the premise promises. And there's a lot of telling us how people felt and a lot of telling us things. And it's just a lot of tell. And maybe this is one where you started at the highest stakes, most tense moment in the story, but there's really no way to do that because it was kind of a long time ago. So yeah, it's just okay. It doesn't sound bad. Sounds good. I like the host. And this is one of those ones where I can't say I disliked it enough for a thumbs down, but I can't say I liked it, so I can't give it a thumbs up. So sideways for me on Blood Will Tell. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
The cat of the week this week comes to us from our listener, Heather Hill. Heather, who just visited Quaint AF Exeter with her friend Tracy.
Hi, Heather. Hi, Tracy.
This is, I think, the 3rd year. And, you know, they're always fun when they come to Exeter. We had a good time. Heather would like to nominate her 2 boys, Henry and Frank. Henry does not respect Frank's personal space ever. He just flops down on top of Frank wherever he may be laying around the house. They are 2 of my very good boys. One of her cats looks like my dear departed Zelda a little bit. And the other one is like one of those Russian blue cats. So thank you, Heather.
All right, Laura Bricker, folks want to reach out to you and say hi and submit any kind of animal, their animal, someone else's animal, any wild animal, a domestic animal, to be Cat of the Week. How can they find you online?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Blue Sky.
What about you, Toby? How can you be found?
At TobyBall603 on Instagram.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm at Kevin Peen Flynn.
You can follow.
I'm sorry I said that because there was just so much peen in DTF St. Louis and I cannot get over it. I'm still thinking about it.
We love it when there's a lot of peen in a show. I know. You can follow me everywhere at Reb Lavoie. You can follow me on X. You can follow me on Instagram. But mostly what I would like you to do is go to Facebook and search for our group. It's called the Crime Writers On Facebook Discussion Group. When you get there, answer the question, which is which one of us is your favorite. We don't care if you tell a truth or a lie in that answer, but as long as you know one of our names, we'll let you in. Get everything we make at Patreon at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons, and our editor is the really terrific Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is my husband, Kevin. This show was recorded in the Caitlin Rogers Project Studio, also known as Studio D, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also run an underground after-hour strip club while our twin siblings are cooling their heels in Gen Pop for crimes we have committed. 100%. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you later.
He just flops down on top of Frank wherever he may be laying around the house. They are two of my very good boys. So apparently he flops down on Frank, much like in our last review, Jason Bateman likes people to just flop down on top of them and lay there.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness.
Yes, I just went off the rails with that, but they're very,
Sure.
Partners in Crime Media. Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids.
We only met a month ago. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
This is a Monday.com ad. The same Monday.com helping people worldwide getting work done faster and better. The same Monday.com designed for every team and every industry. The same Monday.com with built-in AI, scaling your work from day one. The same Monday.com that your team will actually love using. The same Monday.com with an easy and intuitive setup. Go to Monday.com and try it for free. Yes, the same Monday.com.